Okay, we are live with Dr. Patricio Molina. Patricio is, born to a native Chilean father and Syrian mother. His family blended languages and cultures. His intense focus and premature skill on the piano led to a Chilean network debut of his talents on national television at the age of 3. His life would forever be changed after a visit to the United States at the age of 13. He actually then began his pre-college studies at the Manhattan School of Music and then graduated with his master's degree in piano from Manhattan School of Music. Soon after, he began to pursue 2 doctoral degrees at Rutgers University, and he recently graduated in 2019 with his DMA in piano performance, and then in 2020 with his PhD in composition. Patricio's compositions embrace a variety of types of works, notably a fully orchestrated 3-act opera, La Sargento de la Concepcion, based on the Chilean historical events. He draws inspiration from many sources, including his multicultural heritage, poetry, and storytelling. He is the director of music at several churches in New Jersey. He also teaches at the Newark School of the Arts and is passionate about philanthropies. So in 2018, he teamed up with Chile-based lawyer Felipe Lacaros to co-found Notes for Growth. This foundation seeks to bring donated musical instruments to children in need in both the United States and Chile. So today's presentation is about Arabic music and influences in piano music. And so Patricio, welcome. And I would just make sure to let our Zoom attendees and Facebook viewers know that he has said he welcomes questions at any point. So for those on Zoom, you can just ask your questions. And then for those on Facebook, I'll be monitoring that chat and we'll pass your comments and questions along. Welcome, Patricio.
Well, thank you, Jessica. So today we're going to talk about Arabic music and the piano, this is a very interesting topic, close to my heart because my mom is from Syria, and as a pianist, studying piano since I was 3, never came across Arabic piano musicians or even the use of the piano in Arabic music. So it is something that I decided to do as the topic of my PhD thesis for composition. In this talk, I'm going to talk mostly on how the piano was introduced to Arabic music, how that was very unlikely, and we'll look at that, why it was very unlikely. And then we're going to look at some of the theory, and we're going to listen to some music, and we're going to do that within the hour. So a lot to cover. Before we dive into how the piano was introduced to the Arabic music and all of that, just wanted to make a quick mention on the influence, because the influence is 2 ways in a way. It's not just the Western piano coming to the Arabic world, but there's also a lot of influence the other way as well. And that's important to mention, even though this is not going to be the focus of this talk. I'll briefly talk about how there is a musician called Zirab, and he established the Andalusian school in the Iberian Peninsula in the year 850, and there was by that year, there was a lot of theorists in the Arab world that brought some of these ideas and philosophies and aesthetics into Europe through the Iberian Peninsula. So that's very important to mention. But this talk is, it's the piano. So many years later, we're going to talk about how it all came together. Now, also very important to mention is that the system in which the music theory of the West and Arabic music is based on, or at least the roots of it, is in the Pythagorean system. And that system also has a lot of influences in the area, because it is believed that Pythagoras took these philosophies, these ideas, on a couple of trips that he took to Egypt. So again, there's a lot of influences back and forth that are very important to mention. So let's talk about theory in general first. So theory is a very complicated topic, actually. And that is because a theory tries to explain practice. So the practice is there first. And we had that talk on Monday about, performers and composers. And I mentioned how, it's important to be, or I think it's very useful to be a performer, a good performer, and learn from the practice of performing, and then bringing that to composing. Well, in theory, it's kind of like it's very similar to that. The practice comes first, and theories try to explain the practice. Now, in explaining what that practice is, there's oftentimes it's explained in mathematical equations. The practice is simplified and sometimes constricted into a box. And by doing that, the theory tries to explain, which is good. It tries to explain something that is very difficult to explain, but it also usually is not 100% accurate. Okay, and this is what we're going to look at today, because as the theory of Arabic music. This is like language. There's, for example, the practice of language. A lot of people here speak Spanish, and we have so many different accents, and even within countries we have a variety of accents in the same language, Spanish. So imagine how it would feel, to do a theory of the Spanish language and the accent of the Spanish language, and say, okay, this is the correct accent, and everybody, all the Spanish-speaking people, have to speak in this correct grammar, right? So in doing that, you get rid of the practice, right, in favor of a system, of a theory system that sometimes could be there's benefits to it, but it could be also damaging. Now, I'm mentioning that because in Arabic music, in explaining the theory of it, we lose a lot of the nuances. We lose a lot of the practices that are happening in different areas. So, for example, I'll give you an example. All the theorists in Arabic music theorize. Yeah, they use the oud, which is a string instrument, right? They use that oud to be able to rationalize their music. Now, the oud is, and again, the Arabic music is very much influenced by the Pythagorean system. So it's all the ratios of the strings. So the oud is tuned. It has these are the notes in the oud strings: the C, F, A, D, G, and C. Okay, so and these fourths are tuned in the Pythagorean system. So they're Pythagorean fourths, and the third is a Pythagorean third. Between the F and the A. So these are all the open strings of the oud, and those are the notes that create, okay, a scale we have C, D, F, G, A. Okay, so we have almost a scale missing the third degree of a C major, for example, an E, and a B, the seventh degree. So they're we have a scale, right, with all the open strings, with the exception of the third and the seventh. Now, this is what happened. One of the most used scales in Arabic music, okay, is the rast. It's called R-A-S-T, rast scale, or makam. A makam system is so all the open strings all throughout the Arab world, right? They all agree on the exact note, the tuning system. But the third and the seventh notes, the ones that are not found in the oud, right, in the oud open strings, are the ones that vary. There are different accents. So, for example, in Egypt, the third degree note is a little bit lower than in Syria. In Syria, it's a little bit higher. And if you go to Turkey, the third degree note is even higher. Okay, so, and these changes in tuning on the third and the seventh degree of this RAS scale are based, it seems like they're almost arbitrary, right? It's just, you know, whatever the third finger or the third degree is played on the oud, but it's not at all arbitrary, right? It's something that was developed over centuries of practice, and it's like the accent of the music that is very, very much tied to a region in a particular region, and very small variations of that tuning system, even if it's just like 5 cents. Okay, very, very small variation of tuning can be recognized by people, and or they can find the note as being wrong if they're not part of that area, right? So it's like a different accent. They can hear it. So even though the third degree differs in different areas, particular groups are very, you know, they find their tuning is very precise, okay, and it's based again on that practice, on agreements between the musician and what the audience is hearing, and the passing on of that information orally, by the way, okay, because this music was mostly passed down through imitation. So through doing that, created an accent that is particular to that region. All right, so with that, Arabic music has, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Arabic theory now, or a little bit about Arabic music. So there is, even before I talk a little bit about that, just a quick thought. We in the West have learned about, you know, Western theory, and in many cases have learned about Western theory thinking as the superior system, okay, the superior system, and in many cases, actually, in many regions of the world, that mentality, that colonial mentality, affected the you know, the thinking and the rationalizing of their own systems. So I mentioned that because we're going to listen to later on a little bit of this music, and it's going to be very difficult to understand and to listen to, but we have to, you know, in a way, put aside, you know, everything that we learned in Western music and try to understand this music and value it in a completely different way. But anyways, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But Arabic music is based on a system of a group of, okay, let me start with this first. Arabic music is heterophonic. Heterophonic meaning that the melody and the variation of the melody and the ornaments of the melody is the most important thing. Harmony and counterpoint are in many cases even non-existent. Okay, so it's all about the melody and the heterophony of the use of that melody in the heterophonically speaking. So in doing that, musicians are able to color the scale with notes that almost seem arbitrary, because they're not worried about putting the notes together, okay, as harmony or intervals, and seeing how those two notes sound harmonically consonant or dissonant. That's not a worry in a way in a lot of this music, or a concern in this music. So that frees a lot of musicians to create melodic lines that are filled with colors, okay, with nuances, with notes that are, in between what we call the semitones, right? And even in between the semitones, a lot of different colors in between those two, those. So, and these colors, by the way, are very specific. Okay, so the theory is very, very strict in a way. It's very, very strict. So, for example, let's go back to that third degree in the Rast Makam, or the scale. Okay, so for example, a minor. Okay, so let's think of it as like a C major, right? So a minor third from the C would be an E flat for us. The Nahawand scale, okay, which is the closest to the minor scale in the Western tradition, is just slightly lower, okay, and this would be maybe like 5 or 6 cents lower than the E flat, okay. But if the musician is playing the same scale, right, and decides to use different groups of notes, okay. Let's say, for example, a Hijaz. A Hijaz is also another group of notes that also uses a third degree note. But now the third degree note is, about 20 degrees, 20 cents higher than the E flat. Okay, even though it's in the same piece of music, now the third degree is changing. So when we use one group of notes, it's a little bit lower than the E flat. When we use another group of notes, it's a little bit higher than the E flat. And if you use, for example, the Hijaz group of notes, and you use the third degree note a little bit lower than the E flat, it is wrong. The tuning is incorrect, right, for the Hijaz in that area. All right. So with all of that, and by the way, there's so many groupings of these notes. Okay. Let me see something. Let me show you something really quick. 1 second. Okay, so I don't know if anyone here read the book The Galant Style by Gergergen. So he talks about how in the galant style in Western music, and I'm mentioning this because I think this is an easy and a good way to understand Arabic music. How in the galant style there's groupings of notes that create a question and answer kind of thing. So you have a grouping of notes, and there's an answer that usually goes after those, and there's a map. So if you have the introduction of grouping of notes, right? For example, he calls one of them the Romanesque, I think, the Romanesque. Okay, so if you combine that, there's a possibility of 3 or 4 different pathways in a way. So the musician in the galant style, we're going back to the Western tradition, has 3 or 4 different routes to go, depending on that question. So the question has 3 or 4 different answers. Now, if you go and you create a completely different answer that is not part of that map or that system, it shows that the galant musician is not well versed in a way on the galant style. So Arabic music is very much like that. There are groupings of notes, and those groupings of notes have pathways, and those pathways say, the original grouping of notes has 5 different pathways. Those are the ones that the musician can go to. Okay, and that makes it sound like the accent that I'm talking about, the style, the practice of the Arabic music. If the musician goes to a grouping of notes that is outside of that pathways, it shows a lack. It shows an accent that is not part of the culture, or it shows it's not part of the system. All right. And by the way, just a fun fact that a tone or a tone. So from C to D in the piano, we have 200 cents. Okay, this is like the measuring. A semitone is obviously half of that, so it's 100 cents. A quarter tone is 50 cents, and the human ear can hear distinct sounds as small as 6 cents. So we can hear a lot of different things in between the semitones that we have in between the pianos. There's a lot of distinctions, and with practice, right, with experience, by listening to this music, musicians are able to distinguish those minor changes in the tuning. And again, they're very specific to the accent, so they're very accurate to them. All right. So that brings me to 2 things. I'm going to put it in the chat here. Okay, so we have the genes and the maqam. So a genes in Arabic music is what I was telling you about. It's the small grouping of notes. Some textbooks talk about it as a tetrachord. Okay, but it's not really a tetrachord, because some grouping for notes have 6 notes. Some of them have 3 notes. But these are groupings of notes, right? So these are the genes, and they're again distinct to the tuning. Okay, they're very distinct. They have their own distinct tuning, and again, they vary from region to region. Okay, but these are the genes, and there's hundreds of them. And by the way, genes are incorporated into the vocabulary, into the Arabic vocabulary, from generations to generations, and they change tuning also from generation to generation. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So and they change from generation to generation. So the music is always changing. Okay, all of this tuning. But I mentioned this because when I talk about the piano, the way the Arab musicians introduce the piano to their ensembles, their music, is as an introduction of a new genes to their system. It's like an introduction of a new set of notes, a new set of mood to their overall system. So genes, there's hundreds of them. Okay, and again, they change. Some of the genes are incorporated from Turkey, from Persia, from the Arabic world, from different areas, and thus that combination of genes and the pathways are possible in these genes is called a makam. Okay, so makam is a scale, but not quite. It's not a scale in the sense of Western scale. Okay, so it's a scale based on a map of genes, okay, as systems of nodes that are possible to go from one to the other. Okay, so this map is called the makam. So what is a genes? So a genes has a specific intervallic structure. Okay, there's common melodic patterns, okay, that are associated to a particular gene, and the genes are also associated with moods. So, for example, there are particular genes that are associated with morning music. Talk about mood music, in Apple Music and Spotify. This has been going on for hundreds of years in the Arab world. Morning music, evening music, music to fall asleep, music to dance. This mood music. And so genes have also a mood. Okay, intervallic structure and mood. And a makam is a system of genes. Okay, the plural of genes is ahna. So I'm gonna call it like that. So it's a system of ahnas, and they have common modulations. Now, modulation in Arabic world is different from modulation in Western music. A modulation in Arabic in the Arabic theory or world is when you go from one genes to another. Okay, so we can have a genes Nahawan, which is like a minor scale in Western music that starts in C. Okay, and from that C, the Arabic world can go to many different genes. Okay, but the tonic is the same. It's also C. It's always C. So it's modulating from genes to genes to genes. Okay, and there's different pathways of. It's a map, right? So the makam is a map of these genes. Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk briefly about the piano and the kanun, and we're going to get to listen to music pretty soon, but just a couple of more things, and then we'll listen to some stuff. I'm going to talk about the piano and the kanun. So the introduction of the piano to Arabic music occurred in the early part of the 1900s, 20th century. And by the 1930s, most middle class and upper class people in Egypt owned a piano. Okay, so the piano, and this is huge because the piano obviously does not cannot play all of these intricacies, right, between the tones, and it really had a profound impact in the way musicians thought about their system and the way they they philosophized and rationalized their theory. So, for example, in 1932, there was a conference, a big conference in Cairo, Egypt, and musicians from all over the world, including Bartok and Hindemith were in attendance at this conference. Okay, so there were European composers that attended this, and one of the biggest purposes of this conference was to create a system to unify all of these different accents in the Arabic world to create what, something similar to what the Westerners did, to create one system that fits everything. Okay, and the Arabs tried to do this, and it did not go very well. First of all, they tried to create, for example, there's a system now that try to explain Arabic music within a 24 equal equal tones or intervals, 24 equal intervals in an octave. So there's a system that just like what we have in Western music, we have equal temperament. There's something similar to try to rationalize Arabic music, but with more tones that are also equal temperament, but they're quarter tones, but they're equally separated between the semitones into quarter tones. But that system again created a lot of problems, because people from different regions had different accents, and all of a sudden, they were told, your accent is wrong, right? Your tuning is not quite quarter tone, it's a little bit off. But musicians were doing, and these groups of musicians were doing the same thing for hundreds of years. But this this conference tried to rationalize it and put it all together into one system, which ultimately failed. But a lot of modern Arabic music that in the last 40 years, 30 years, pop Arabic music is based on this equal temperament, 24 quarter tone scale. So in a way, this theory predicted or prophesied something that was going to happen to a lot of Arabic music. So, and it looks like there's a question here. Oh, great. Thank you, Rose. Yep. So, so let's talk about the piano. So the piano was introduced, as I said, in Egypt. There was, most middle class and upper class had pianos in their homes. It's a big deal. So there were genes. There were some of these genes, some of these groupings of notes began to change. Okay, they began to change the tuning and began to become closer and closer to the piano. So, for example, Nahawand. Nahawand is the minor scale in Arabic music. Before the introduction of the piano to the Arabic world, the third degree was a little bit lower than the minor third that we have in Western music. But as the piano was introduced to Arabic music, now all of the musicians were just using that perfect, that equal temperament minor third as the new Nahawand. Okay, so the piano had, and another interesting influence is that the oud, instead of being tuned into those Pythagorean ratios, now people went to the piano, they play the A, and they just tune that, or the electronic tuners, right? And now is tuned in that equal temperament tunings. So there's a lot of profound influence and changes happening because of the Westernization and an introduction of Western instruments into Arabic music. So there's an instrument that, so when the piano was introduced to Arabic music, the piano was behaving not as a piano at first. And it is very interesting. It was behaving as an instrument, an Arabic instrument called the qanun. Okay, and there's different spellings of this word, but K-A-N-U-N, okay, qanun. And the qanun is 2 to 3 strings per note instrument. And just like the piano, it has fixed tuning. Okay, so it's very similar to the piano. Just fixed tuning. Usually, if the fixed tuning is able to do those quarter tones, but those quarter tones, again, they're fixed, so they're not. They're based on that equal temperament. And maybe we will not have time. We will not have time to do this today, but I recommend that you listen to some YouTube players playing the qanun, on the qanun playing, for example, Bach. And it's very interesting how the qanun can play some piano repertoire, and the piano can imitate some Arabic repertoire. So it sounds like the sitar, but it's not. It's a different type of technique, and so there's some similarities, but not. It's different. All right. So Arabic musicians, when they introduced the piano to Arabic music, okay, there was an attempt to change the mechanics of the piano. And Sabra, S-A-B-R-A, was one of those musicians that at the conference in Cairo in 1932, he introduced this new piano. Okay, and he went to France and he learned the mechanism of the piano. He tried to create new pedals where you can have like quarter tone capabilities with the piano. That piano did not go very far because it was too expensive to create, very difficult to maintain, and the qanun can sound and can imitate. So musicians just prefer to use the qanun instead of this expensive new instrument, right? And another Lebanese musician that tried to do this is Shaheen, C-H-A-H-I-N-E, Shaheen, who also, he has a wonderful recording of his microtonal piano that he created, an album in the 70s of using this new piano, microtonal piano, with music that sounds like the piano sounds like a qanun, honestly. All right, so I think we're good to listen to some. Are there any questions before we listen to some music?
Would you mind if I read the questions in the chat? Most of them you've addressed, but for our viewers on Facebook, they can't see this Zoom chat here. So would you be okay if I read?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so Rose says, could you briefly explain how the system would affect piano tuning? So I think you've covered that. Yes. And Gina says, your explanation of the genes makes sense. I have an adult flute student who introduced me to the ney, I don't know how you say that, and the heterophonic melodies and the Arabic folk music that he loved. Another person said, my family is Lebanese, immigrated to Brazil, and I always wanted to know this. When you were talking about the system of the genes and the maqam. And she said, I grew up listening to Arabic music, but was trained in traditional classical education. Thank you for your research. And then I just had a couple questions. Like when you said that, the piano was introduced and this idea of switching from the quarter tones to the half steps, was there backlash from some of these older or more traditional musicians to the modernization of the Arabic pop music? And then my just general question was, as a composer, you touched on this. Oh, sorry, on my camera. You touched on this a little bit, but just these idea of kind of codifying or unifying notation or systems of, systems of notation, but also systems of playing is a challenge for everybody, musicians, anybody in literature, trying to reproduce an oral tradition with visual symbols. So I'm just curious, as you've been writing in these two different worlds, the Arabic and then the Western world, what are some pros and cons that you have found about notation software, or just like because it's a very imperfect system, of course it is, to write or pitch in a rhythm. So I was just curious. We may not have time to get all those, but yeah, those are the questions.
Yeah. Well, so to answer the first question, yes, there was some pushback. Believe it or not, a lot of the pushback, because in that 1932 conference, Arabic musicians some Arabic musicians were very willing to get rid of their whole quarter tone system and adopt Western scales. And it was, they actually got pushback, believe it or not, from people like Bartok. Okay, so Bartok was one of the musicians that said, just keep your system, but obviously there's like a whole other group of musicians, Arabic musicians, that were the traditionalists, the folk musicians, that were completely against, doing that as well. That was the whole purpose of, putting all of the system all of these accents into one system. If I have an accent and I speak the same accent with my whole group of people, I'm not, why would I try to change it? So the other question was about the theory, the writing for the two things. That's a very in-depth topic. Maybe we can talk about it in more depth another time. But what I will say is that the Arabic theory and system, and much of Western system, most of music evolves, in a way in which, the music is agreed upon by the musician and the audience, and musicians sometimes try to do new things. Obviously, those new things sometimes are not good and they just disappear, and they just disappear as part of history. But sometimes they try new things that are imitated by other musicians because those things are unique. They're interesting. They really talk to the community. And those things then become part of the language. Okay, as more musicians try to imitate those new ideas, then you get, it becomes part of the language. There's, it's just, in Western music, it's not better or worse, by the way. It's just a different way of approaching it. In Western music, for example, there was a group of musicians, theorists in Vienna, okay, and a lot of musicians in Germany, that said that there was one type of music, okay, or one form of writing, okay, and if you did not adhere to that type of writing, you're not a musician, you're not a composer, right? And that philosophy was created in a way, almost, it's not as organically as philosophies that were created. And this, we can argue about this, but it's not as organically as philosophies and aesthetics that took, trials, imitation, acceptance with the audience, things that were rejected, the audience did not like. So they like, so now more musicians are going to try. This group of musicians just created a new aesthetic philosophy that did not go through that process. And by the way, there's this another topic, but I'll just briefly mention it. I think it has to do, there's also ties to racism here in a way, theorists that created these systems not only wanted to create a new system, but they wanted to, in many ways, create a system that was superior to other systems, racially, and anyone that did not adhere to this system is intellectually inferior and all of that, and they try to prove. So there's a lot of racism in these systems too, that I think more and more people are realizing it now. Schenker, for example, I loved a lot of the things that Hitler was doing. and approved of that superior race theory. And in his theories, is very much tied to how. So we're not going to go too much in depth into there, but the things that a lot of these systems did not go through that process of imitation, acceptance, rejection that a lot of the accents of music go through, like Arabic music, for example.
Rose had a question that she just said, is there a place to find more information about the 1932 conference in Cairo? And then we'll let you play your music.
Yeah, well, you could, I have my thesis. I think it's available now. You can just check. I go into very, there's a whole section about that conference. Very influential. So just look at my thesis. Is you can probably find it online. Okay, so let's listen to some music. All right, so look, what we're gonna do is the piano in the golden age of Arabic music. Okay, so let's listen to some music. We're going to analyze two types of scales that are very similar. Okay, so we're going to listen to some traditional Arabic music first in Nahawand. Now, I mentioned that Nahawand is a group of genes, right, or scales or notes that are similar to the minor scale. So think of it as a C minor scale in the Western scale. So this is very similar, and because of the introduction of piano and all of that, now more than ever is actually a minor scale, right? It's all those quarter tones are. So we're going to listen to a traditional Nahawand style, and then we're going to listen to another piece of music that is in also Nahawand, right? But with the piano introduction, and we're going to see how the piano affected, okay, that music. Okay, so let's see. And it takes years, okay, even years and a lot of hours of listening to be able to listen to the intricacies of the different tunings here. So we're not going to be able to appreciate the fullness of it in this first listening. But I'm going to talk on top of the music and tell you when one scale is going from one genes to another. Okay, so hopefully you can try to pick up on the different groupings and the modulation of these groupings as we go along. Okay, so this piece is Alf Lela Willela, and is by Kulthum. And let's hear it. Can you hear that? I can hear it.
No, we cannot.
Oh, tech problems. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Let's try that again. Here we go.
يا حبيبي.
It sounds close to the minor scale, but it's Nahawand, it's called.
يا حبيبي.
It's just 4 notes. Okay, sorry. Oh.
السماء ونجومه وقمره قمره صغره وانت وانا يا حبيبي انا يا حياتي انا كلنا في الحب سوا والغاوى منه الغاوى
Now we're back to the
الهوى يسقينا الهنا ويقول بالهنا والهوى منه الهوى
And just because of time, I'm going to stop here. I hope you can hear, the modulations of genes, right? And this again is I picked a minor sort of, Nahawand, so to be able to hear, the difference. Now we're gonna try to listen to another example. I had a lot of stuff I want to show you, but we're running out of time here, so. We're going to listen to another example of Syrian musician Sakiya Hamdan. And you're going to hear the piano. The piano is very prominent. Now, when you hear the piano, I analyze, you can analyze the music with Western, theory, 1 going to 5 and 1 not. But you could also analyze it as the introduction of a new gens to the system, to the Makam system. And I think that's if you look at it that way, you appreciate the introduction of the piano into this Arabic music in a completely different way. Now notice, I'm gonna play a section where the piano restricts, in a way, okay, the pathways of the music. Okay, the makam, the pathways of the makam. But then the piano stops playing, and that's when the musician is gonna go into the places where the piano cannot go. So that's why the introduction of the piano into Arabic music is like an introduction of a new gens to the system, which actually follows along the steps of hundreds of years of the tradition. So it's very, very much in the Arabic tradition to do this. All right, so let's see. The piano is in the background. So again, the pathways are possible and constricted. And notice how it opens up the moment the piano drops. Now the piano drops. And listen to all the pathways. just because of time, let's stop right there. You know, we didn't even talk about rhythm in Arabic music, and it's just a complete different word. You know, there's just so much there too. But at least you get an idea of how, you know, the piano came to the Arabic world, how it influenced some of the music. And I think that if there's anything to take from this, is that to be able to appreciate the introduction of the piano into the Arab world, we have to listen to it in the way Arabs would listen to it. And it's with as an introduction of a new pathway, of a new genes to the music.
I love that take on it, that, you know, instead of resisting new instruments or new ideas and systems, it's just like, oh, we can view this as a way of, you know, adding to things, take it or leave it. In this case, I literally, sometimes the piano's there, sometimes it wasn't, but that's really a cool perspective. So I know we have to let you go. Rose says, thank you so much. Yeah, we really appreciate this. This was very eye-opening, and just what a wonderful way to think about. You know, as you're talking, I kept thinking, like, people often say music is an international language, and in some ways I agree, and then in other ways I think no, like, well, it could, but there's so much we don't know about this, so this sheds a whole nother perspective on it, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, enjoy. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks, Patricio. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
This is great. This is great. This is
I love
great.
your comment that you were like, okay, this makes so much sense now with what your family's tradition, and yeah.
Well, I am Lebanese. My whole family, both sides are from Lebanon. And I grew up in Brazil, and they always wanted me to play the music at the piano, and never worked.
Like, I can't.
It never worked, and they look at me like, yeah, are you a pianist?
What's wrong with you? Yeah.
And they look at me like, did you learn how to play piano? And so now it makes sense. And I've been trying to find his thesis. In fact, he has a website. I probably will contact him so I can read a little bit more.
I think Gina posted the title of it, which is called The Piano, but I was looking too to see if we could link for it. I couldn't find it that quickly, but it's, who knows, but.
Probably that Realm, and so we might need to get in the Realm catalog.
From Rutgers University, so if you look on maybe in their database, excuse me.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. This is wonderful. This is great.
Well, Patricio is collaborating with our group for next year to hopefully help us install some pianos in Puerto Rico for our festival. So we will continue to have him be a part of this, which I'm really excited about. So,
well, this is great. This is great. And let me know if you need help, but I'm glad to help whatever you need. Okay. Thank you so much. This is great. Bye-bye.